Michelangelo Bunarroti, who we usually refer to as Michelangelo, lived a long life from 1475 to 1564. He was trained in Florence and worked there and in Rome for most of his life. He was a sculptor, architect, and painter, and also a great draftsman. We're going to focus on Michelangelo's paintings, but to assess his achievement, it is important to keep in mind that he was the author of some of the most important sculptures and buildings ever made. Among them are the famous David and the Moses, and also the Dome of St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican. Michelangelo is the first artist who was generally recognized as a genius by his contemporaries. This is an important landmark in the history of what it has meant to be an artist in Europe. His dedication to the different arts, the sense that he culminates in his work a quest for an ideal of beauty begun in the early Renaissance, and his enormous influence make Michelangelo the central figure of the High Renaissance, together with Leonardo and Raphael. He made few easel paintings and devoted most of his energy to mural painting. His most important work in this area are the paintings in the Sistine Chapel of the Vatican, which include the murals on the vault, which you see here at the top of the image, and on the altar wall across the room. The Sistine Chapel is a large chapel in the Vatican used by the Pope. It's also the place where still today cardinals gather to elect the new Pope. It's named after Pope Sixtus IV, who had it built in the 15th century. Michelangelo painted the vault here between 1508 and 1512, on commission from another Pope, Julius II. The central space shows 9 scenes from the book of Genesis in the Old Testament. Surrounding these are many figures in fictive architecture and sculpture. Let's see a couple of images from the vault up close. This shows the creation of the first man. God is surrounded by a group of figures. Adam, on the opposite side, is alone. The space around the figures is barren. They both look like gods or heroes from Greek or Roman mythology. They're inspired by the great sculptures of classical antiquity that were being discovered at the time, such as this, the Laocoon. It was excavated in Rome in 1506 and was displayed in the Vatican when Michelangelo worked there. Ancient art had used the human body, very often in the nude, as the main element of its vocabulary. The grandeur and expressiveness of this and similar sculptures, and their particular idea of beauty, set the standard for Michelangelo. What the artist represents here is the moment when God has modeled the body of man and is about to animate it, to give it a spirit. We can almost feel an electric tension as the figures are about to touch. This is a beautiful idea expressed in an image. It's a very clear way of highlighting the difference between matter and spirit. The spirit is what is missing when life is gone, what is mysteriously no longer present in the body of a person just deceased. It is what Adam is about to receive. We can feel that his entire body will be activated. One more thing about this image. Look at the body of Adam. It's very typical of how Michelangelo paints. The contours are clearly delineated, and the modeling of form, the use of light and shade to create volume, is very emphatic, very noticeable. Because of these two factors, Michelangelo's painted figures look very sculptural. He once wrote, "Painting is to be considered the better the more it approaches relief." We can see this goal of his here. This is another image from the same ceiling. It shows a Sibyl, a figure from Greek mythology who foresaw the future and who Christians believed had foretold the coming of Christ. Look at how the different parts of the body are twisted in opposing directions. The face looks left, the shoulders and torso look right, and the legs turn left again. Setting parts of the body against each other was considered beautiful. There was a name for this, contrapposto, which means counterpose in Italian. It was a compositional device used by Greek classical sculptors to animate their figures. It was recovered by the artists of the Renaissance and was used extensively by Michelangelo. This sheet of paper shows some of the preparatory drawings that Michelangelo made for this one figure. Imagine the amount that he made for the entire ceiling. Even though Sybils were women, the model used by Michelangelo appears to be a man. Look at the careful modeling of volume. One of the toes of the figure at the bottom seems to have needed more work than the rest. The quality of Michelangelo's drawings contributed to raising the standards of artistic practice for centuries, and they highlighted the importance of skill for the reputation of artists. In 1534, Michelangelo received the commission to paint the altar wall of the same large chapel in the Vatican, with the scene of the Last Judgment. He finished it in 1541. Important changes had taken place in Michelangelo's mind and in religious attitudes in general since he painted the vault over 20 years earlier. This seems more pessimistic. It expresses Michelangelo's worries about death and redemption at the time. The central figure is the resurrected Christ. He shows the wounds of the crucifixion on his feet and hands. He looks down to where the damned are. With his raised right hand, he casts them onto hell. With his other hand, he calls the blessed to heaven. He is surrounded by saints and prophets who seem in awe of him and strangely powerless. Next to him is the Virgin. She looks towards the side, where the blessed are shown being lifted from their graves and flown or pulled up to heaven. She recoils from looking at the opposite side. There, at the bottom, are the damned. Charon, who we saw in a painting by Patnier, delivers a group from his boat with his oar. Just below Christ, to his left, is Saint Bartholomew, who according to Christian tradition had been skinned alive for preaching. In one hand he holds his skin. The face bears the features of Michelangelo. Life, judged by God, is seen here as an epic quest. We see in this scene a combination of somber, almost terrifying mood and an awesome physical and psychological presence. Contemporaries identify this combination as typical of this artist. They refer to it as terribilità. A word on technique. As was usually the case when painting large walls, the technique used in these works by Michelangelo is fresco painting. Fresco means fresh in Italian. In this technique, pigments were mixed in water and applied directly onto wet plaster. When the plaster dried, the colors became an integral part of the wall. Only enough wet plaster for a day's work was applied at a time, so that it would not dry before painting. The daily patches of plaster are still visible when wall paintings are seen close up.